Are you having a hard time getting listeners to your podcast? Is the bulk of your time spent on content creation, leaving you very little time for marketing or promotion? If you answered yes to either of those questions, then you should do what I did and reach out to Pod Boost Hub on Upwork. Pod Boost Hub brings you 100% organic promotion services. Pod Boost works around your budget and your needs. Contact them today on Upwork or even on Facebook. Pod Boost Hub. Your content, your audience, their responsibility. Hey there, listeners. Are you ready to elevate your energy game? Let me introduce you to Dubby, the energy drink brand on a mission to help you be better. Dubby is designed to give you the boost you need without the jitters or crashes that accompany many of the drinks supplied by Big Energy. Their drinks are sugar-free, calorie-free, and free from artificial colors or dyes. They launched with just one flavor, but thanks to the support of their loyal customers, they've grown to offer over 15 unique custom-made flavors. So if you're looking for a clean, delicious energy boost that helps you power through your day, look no further than Dubby. Join the movement and experience the difference for yourself. Visit WGG and use the code WW1POD for a 10% discount on your order. Remember, with Dubby, it's all about being better, one sip at a time. Alright, bills are paid. Let's get on with the show. I'm Henny B, and welcome to the World War I Stories podcast, where history comes alive through the voices of those who lived it. Some scenes in these stories may be too graphic for sensitive listeners, so listener discretion is advised. Today's episode, Easter Rising. If there was one thing Aiden McCool could not stand, it was uncertainty, and uncertainty was what he felt now. He had been called to the War Office in Whitehall, a central area of London that housed many important government operations. Aiden sat in the waiting area, his mind racing. The War Office was a grand, imposing building, its corridors echoing with the footsteps of officers and the murmur of urgent conversations. He glanced at the clock on the wall, its ticking only amplifying his anxious thoughts. For the past few years, Aiden had been assigned to the training of fresh recruits near London, a duty he performed with diligence. But now, with the war in Europe stretching British resources thin, he sensed a change was imminent. The secretary finally called his name, and Aiden stood, smoothing his uniform before approaching the general's office. The door creaked open, and Aiden stepped in, the door closing behind him with a solid thud. General Sir Archibald Murray stood behind his desk, a man in his mid-50s with a solid build and graying hair. His sharp eyes and strong jawline gave him a distinguished, authoritative presence. Dressed in his formal military uniform, his rank insignia prominently displayed on his shoulder straps. The insignia consisted of a crown and a crossed sword and baton, symbolizing his high rank and command authority. "Captain McCool, please be seated." Aiden did as he was told and took a seat on the leather high-backed chair adjacent to the general's large mahogany desk. He hoped that his nervousness was not apparent in his silence. A moment later, the general also took a seat. He leaned over the desk towards him, placing his hands clasped together on the desk. "Captain, I won't mince words with you. You've done a fantastic job at Aldershot." Aldershot Military Camp was the facility in which Aiden had been stationed at. Located about 40 miles from Whitehall, it was a significant training facility for the British military. The general continued, "The men that you've helped train have performed with distinction in Belgium and France. That being said, we have an important need for you elsewhere." Aiden braced for what was to come, his voice not giving away his nervousness. "Whatever you need, General, I'm in this for king and country." The general straightened his hands out and clapped them on the table. "That's good to hear, my boy, because you're going home." Taken aback, a confused look crossed Aiden's face. "I'm sorry, am I being discharged, sir?" The general let out a guffaw. "Nothing of the sort, my lad. We're stretched thin. I need someone I can trust in Dublin, someone loyal to the crown to keep an eye on things, to keep the people in line if needed. You see, some of the locals, your brethren I guess you would say, aren't taking too kindly to conscription. I think the presence of a good old Irish boy like yourself can help ease that tension. Sir, Aiden began cautiously, I understand the need for a steady presence, but with all due respect, my position as an officer might not be welcomed by all. The general nodded, a hint of sympathy in his eyes. I understand your concerns, Captain McCool, but that's precisely why you're needed. You know the land. You know the people. We need to show that while Ireland has been granted limited home rule, its implementation is delayed until after the war. Until then, Ireland remains under the purview of the king. By placing someone like you, Irish-born, loyal to the crown, in a position of authority, we demonstrate flexibility and a firm hand. Aiden took a deep breath. This had the potential to be a heavy burden on him, a burden the general would never understand. I'll do my best, sir. The general stood, signaling the end of the meeting. I have no doubt that you will. You leave tomorrow. Report to the garrison commander in Dublin when you arrive. And Captain, he added, his tone softening, when was the last time you were in Dublin? He could not remember in that moment the last time he went home. It's been a while, sir. About 10 years, if I had to guess, sir. The general nodded his head in acknowledgement. I was there last year. Things are different now, especially for those of us wearing that uniform. He left the War Office in disbelief of sorts. He had gone into the morning expecting to be reassigned to somewhere on the eastern front of the war raging in Europe, a place he had sent many young men in the last year. But instead, he was going home. The train whistled sharply as it clattered into Kingsbridge Station. The sprawling iron and stone structure sat along the banks of the River Liffey, just beside the bridge for which it had been named. Aiden stepped off the train and onto the platform. The city looked familiar, yet distant to him. He took a look around, watching the people. At one time, they were his people. Now he saw them a little differently. They were subjects to the British crown, just as he was. He stepped out of the station and into the streets of Dublin. The city bustled around him, alive with movement, but distant. The cobblestones beneath his feet were the same, but the shops and pubs lining the streets had changed. Some bore new names. Others remained, but their signs were faded and worn by 10 years of wind and rain. Letters chipped away, paint flaked to near nothing. Familiar yet unfamiliar, like a home rearranged in his absence. He consulted his paperwork to verify the address of the Royal Barracks, a place he had seen in the past but had never visited. He found his bearings and started in the appropriate direction. As he navigated the streets towards his destination, he couldn't help but feel the eyes upon him. He had questioned whether or not to wear his uniform when he arrived. Now, with every glance cast his way, he realized he'd made the wrong choice. He felt more at ease once inside the walls of the Royal Barracks. He entered through a set of heavy wooden doors and stepped into a high-ceilinged corridor lined with stone. The smell of dust and old paper lingered in the air, a scent he'd known well over the years. Once inside, he navigated his way to the office of the garrison commander. The name on the door read Colonel Francis Carrington. Aiden knocked. He heard paper shuffling from within and then a voice. "Please, come in." Aiden turned the knob and stepped inside. The office was warm, quiet. The walls were lined with tall bookshelves, each one neatly filled with books, statues, and what looked like military awards or commendations. Behind a desk sat a man who seemed tall and slender, his posture sharp, hands resting loosely on the edge of a leather-bound folder. Aiden was struck by how young he looked, perhaps in his 30s, if that. Young for a colonel, he thought to himself. The colonel reached out his hand. Papers, please. Aiden retrieved his orders and handed them over. The colonel looked them over and then stood. He reached his hand out towards Aiden. Captain McCool, we've been waiting for you. Aiden, in return, shook the man's hand. Thank you, sir. I'm happy to be here in the service of the Crown. The colonel gestured towards a chair. Please, have a seat. Aiden sat, clasped his hands together in his lap, and looked on as the colonel returned to reading his paperwork. Says here you were born here in Dublin, joined the British Army in '06, regular enlistment, officer training shortly after, Aldershot, promotions came quickly after that, impressive resume. Tell me, have they described to you what it's like here in Dublin since the war started? The colonel asked. Aiden thought a moment. No, nobody had really briefed him on anything. Letters from his parents had an underpinning of discontent, but that was all he knew. Not really, sir. The colonel nodded slowly, setting the folder down and folding his hands again. Well, things have changed. Subtly at first, not so subtly now. He paused as if choosing his words carefully. There's a tension in the air. Resentment. The people haven't taken kindly to conscription. Not in the way London had hoped. Aiden listened. He had expected some unease, but this sounded deeper. Carrington continued. You'll hear talk in the streets, pubs, churches, even among the local constabulary. There are whispers about full-on home rule, independence, even open rebellion. Some say it's just smoke, others think there's fire behind it. He leaned back slightly. Your presence here, an Irishman in a British officer's uniform, could be a help, or it could be a spark. That's what we're going to find out. I'm here for whatever you need, sir. The colonel sat back in his chair a bit. Tell me, McCool, are you planning to stay in barracks, or are you going to stay at your parents' home? I understand they aren't too far away from here. Should be an easy commute should you choose to stay there. Aiden hesitated before answering. It wasn't a long pause, but long enough. I've given that some thought, sir, he said. I think it's best I stay here at the barracks, at least for now. Carrington arched an eyebrow. Why's that? I haven't seen my parents in years, Aiden replied. I'll visit them, but staying there? I think I'll feel it out first. According to their letters, they're proud of my service, but still unsure of it. Carrington nodded slowly. Sensible. He tapped the edge of Aiden's file with one finger. We need officers who can think ahead, especially now. There was a brief silence as Carrington closed the folder. Then, you'll be given a room in the officers' quarters. I'll have your schedule sent up. For now, get settled. We'll talk again soon. He had not been here in years. Now, he stood in the street, facing his parents' two-story row house, one of a dozen pressed shoulder to shoulder along the lane, identical in shape, but somehow older in spirit. When he had joined the British Army, his father, a man who longed for Irish autonomy from the Crown, had been none too pleased. He still pledged his love in letters, but Aiden could always sense the disappointment beneath the surface. After a few moments of quiet reflection and hesitation, he stepped forward and knocked. He stood on the stoops, smiling faintly as the door opened. His mother stood in the doorway, a vase of daisies cradled in her hands. For a second, neither of them moved. Then the vase slipped from her fingers. It struck the stone step and shattered, water and flowers scattering across the ground. She brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide, filling with tears. Aiden, she breathed. He took off his cap, suddenly unsure of what to say. But he didn't need to say anything. She stepped forward and pulled him into her arms. They sat around the kitchen table, the broken vase forgotten. Aiden nursed a cup of tea, though it had long since gone cold. His mother sat opposite of him, hands folded, eyes soft. His father leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his silence louder than either of them. "I didn't know it had gotten this serious," Aiden said, glancing between them. They had been discussing the political atmosphere between their beloved country and Britain. "We've had murmurs at the barracks, but nothing direct. No orders, just whispers." His mother looked to his father, as if giving him permission to speak. "That's because they don't want you to know," his father said flatly. "Not until the shooting starts." Aiden frowned. "There's no need for that. Ireland has home rule. It passed in 14. His father laughed, short, dry, humorless. He pushed off the counter and walked to the window. "Limited home rule, son. Very limited. Delayed by war, watered down by Westminster, and wrapped in enough red tape to choke the lot of us." Aiden stared into his cup. "It's still a step." "A step isn't enough when you've been crawling for centuries." His father turned back to him. "You've been gone too long, Aiden. This place, it's not the Ireland you left, and it's not the one the Crown thinks it still owns." His mother reached over and gently laid a hand on Aiden's. "They're not all rebels, love, but they're tired. Tired of waiting. Tired of promises that don't come true." His father sat down at the table next to his mother. "Enough of the political talk. Do you have yourself a girl yet?" The atmosphere lightened considerably, and Aiden sat with his parents talking for the next 2 hours. As he ready to leave, his father assisted him with his tunic. "Son, I want you to visit as much as you can while you're here." Aiden was happy to hear this. "Thank you, Father. I would love to, so I will." His father put his hands on Aiden's shoulders. "That's good to hear, but when you come, don't wear that uniform." Aiden stood at the inner gate of the Royal Barracks, his rifle slung across his shoulder, the crisp morning air carrying the faint scent of coal smoke and damp stone. The city beyond the high walls felt still, unusually so, as if holding its breath. He shifted his weight and looked out towards the river, just visible through a narrow gap in the wall. A gull passed overhead, silent. Somewhere, deeper in the yard, he heard the clatter of boots, another patrol changing shift. Nothing out of place, but still something. He exhaled slowly, pressing his glove against the chill iron of the gatepost. He couldn't remember the last time he'd missed Easter service. Back in England, even on the training fields, he'd always found time to attend chapel. Here, his duty roster hadn't allowed it. The priest at the small barracks chapel had offered a sunrise mass, but by then Aiden was already posted, boots on stone, pacing the northern yard. He didn't mind. Not really. But as the morning wore on and the city refused to wake, he found himself thinking more of that small, worn chapel, the scent of old candles, the taste of silence between prayers. Another shift of guards passed by, nodding. Aiden returned the gesture, his eyes drifting towards the rooftops of the city. That was when he noticed it. Smoke. A faint column rising in the distance, thin, gray, unfamiliar. He narrowed his eyes. It wasn't from a chimney. A moment later, he heard the first report of gunfire. A sharp crack, then another, then several, close together. He turned slowly to face the barracks proper. The quiet was gone. The air inside the barracks was no longer still. Boots hit stone harder. Voices rose above their usual cadence. The calm discipline of the morning had given way to something urgent, fractured. From his post at the gate, Aiden turned as soldiers spilled out from the main building, some half-dressed, others pulling on belts or buckling gear. They moved with purpose but not precision, the kind of movement that comes when orders are barked before they're fully understood. One man rushed past him, eyes wide, clutching his cap in one hand. "They've taken the post office," he shouted over his shoulder. Another followed, heading towards the armory. "Volunteers! Armed. Sackville Street's under siege. Aiden stepped forward instinctively, hand brushing the stock of his rifle. He opened his mouth to speak, ask for clarity, for command, but no one stopped. No one had answers, just motion, just noise. And above it all, the distant staccato of rifle fire, controlled at first, then wild. Dublin was no longer holding its breath. It had exhaled, and all hell had followed. The shouting grew louder. Boots pounded across the courtyard in chaotic rhythm, no longer a drill, no longer routine. Rifles were being handed out, helmets buckled. Officers barked partial orders as rumors twisted into action. Aiden remained at his post, unsure whether to hold or move, until a young private rounded the corner at full speed. "Captain McCool," the boy called, his breath ragged. He couldn't have been more than 18. Aiden stepped towards him. "Here." The private skidded to a stop. "You're to report inside, sir. Colonel Preston wants all senior officers in the briefing room right away." Aiden gave a sharp nod. "You're sure?" "Yes, sir. Direct orders. I'll hold the gate, sir." "Very well." Aiden clapped him once on the shoulder and turned. He ran towards the barracks, the sound of gunfire echoing behind him. The barracks corridors echoed with the clang of boots and clipped voices. Aiden passed 2 soldiers loading crates of ammunition near the stairwell. A third man darted by, helmet in hand, muttering to himself. When he reached the second floor, a lieutenant pointed him towards the briefing room with a brisk nod. The door was already ajar. Aiden stepped inside. The room was warm, stifling, its windows shut tight to ward off the smoke already seeping into the Dublin sky. A long table dominated the space, strewn with maps and marked reports. Around it stood 6 officers, one in full field dress, another still tucking in his shirt. All were tense, focused. Colonel Rupert Preston stood at the head of the table, a tall, angular man with a clean-shaven jaw and tired eyes. His uniform was impeccable. His voice was sharp. "Captain McCool," he said without looking up, marking something with a fountain pen. "Glad you could join us. We're already behind." Aiden moved to an empty space at the table and nodded. "Sir?" Preston gestured towards the largest map. It showed central Dublin, King Street, Sackville Street, and the General Post Office marked with a red square. "At approximately 1100 hours, the colonel began, armed men, Irish volunteers, possibly accompanied by the citizen army, stormed the General Post Office, took the building outright, erected barricades on Sackville Street. Flags were raised, one of them with the words Irish Republic. A murmur spread through the room. Preston continued. "Engagements are spreading. Reports are coming in from Dublin Castle, Jacob's Factory, Boland's Mill. This is not a flash protest. This is coordinated." Another officer, a major with a thick mustache, spoke next. "And the civilians, sir?" "Scattered, frightened. Trams halted, shops shuttered. Some helping the rebels. Most are hiding." Preston turned to Aiden. "You're local. What's your read?" Aiden blinked. He hadn't expected to be addressed so quickly. "It's Easter Monday. The streets were quiet. Too quiet. If it's coordinated, sir, they've been planning this for months, maybe years." The colonel nodded grimly. "My thoughts exactly." Another officer, Captain Bowden, spoke from near the map. "Sir, if we hit them now, fast, we might retake Sackville and the GPO before they dig in." Preston folded his arms. "Our numbers are scattered. Many of our men are on leave or posted elsewhere across the city. Reinforcements from Nukura are hours away, possibly more." A pause. Then, "We will hold our ground and wait for additional forces before launching any major counterattack. Until then, any contact is defensive only. Understood?" Heads nodded. Then Preston looked back at Aiden. "Captain McCool, you'll remain here for now. I want you coordinating communication between the front gate, the garrison patrols, and any incoming dispatches. You're Irish. That makes you both a resource and a liability." Aiden stiffened. "Understood, sir." Preston's voice dropped a pitch. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Dismissed. Aiden sat at a heavy desk near the barracks communications room, the worn surface now cluttered with field reports, messenger slips, and charcoal-smudged maps. The air was thick with the scent of sweat, ink, and smoke drifting through the high stone corridors. A telegraph machine clacked behind him in intermittent bursts. Outside, distant gunfire crackled, dulled by the thick barrack walls, but not distant enough. Every few minutes, a runner would burst through the door, breathless and muddy, delivering another scrap of information that added one more grim thread to the tapestry of the day. He read one now. Crown forces under fire from rebel sharpshooters on Northumberland Road. 2 casualties. Limited return fire. Awaiting reinforcements from the castle. Another report arrived moments later, handed off by a corporal with trembling hands. City Hall taken. Tricolor flying above the roof. South Dublin Union under siege. Aiden scanned the line. They've taken City Hall, he murmured aloud, disbelief catching in his throat. Another message followed, handwritten, scrawled hastily in the margin of a torn ledger page. Civilians caught in crossfire near St. Stephen's Green. Snipers reported in upper windows. Women and children among the dead. He lowered the page and closed his eyes for a moment. The telegraph clacked again. He turned to the operator. What is it? The man didn't look up. Curragh columns delayed. Rails disrupted. Rebel sabotage suspected. Aiden stood slowly, stretching his back. Through the window across the room he could see a distant plume of smoke twisting skyward from Sackville Street. It caught the afternoon sun and turned it a dull, angry red. He heard an explosion, not loud, but deep, muffled, a concussive tremor that settled in his ribs. No one spoke. The room held its breath. Then the corporal beside him said quietly, "That was the post office, wasn't it?" Aiden didn't answer. He didn't need to. He returned to his seat, hands trembling just slightly now. He picked up another report, not because he wanted to read it, but because there were more, and because someone had to. As the sun dipped behind the smoke-hazed skyline, the weight of it all began to settle over him. Not from what he had seen, but from what he now knew he would never forget. Over the next few days, Aiden remained at his desk, his world shrinking to the space between ink pots and dispatch papers. Outside, Dublin burned. The Easter sun had long since given way to a sky stained gray with smoke. Columns of it rose across the horizon, curling above rooftops like black flags of defiance. From the upper windows, Aiden had watched fires spread from Sackville Street to the Gaius, consuming buildings he'd once passed as a boy. The General Post Office had become a fortress. Rebels had seized it early on, and the Union Jack had been torn down. Now the tricolor and a banner that read Irish Republic flew in its place. His fingers were stained with ink, sleeves rolled past his elbows, collar loose at his throat. Each report that crossed his desk carried another piece of the city's unraveling. Snipers had taken position in church steeples and alley windows. Trenches had been dug into St. Stephen's Green. Communication lines were severed, and couriers were being shot in the streets. One man, barely more than a boy, bled out on the barrack floor just the night before. His final words were a garbled whisper, "Ambushed near the Four Courts." The barracks, once a place of measured routine, had turned reactive, frantic. Colonel Preston came and went in bursts, barking orders, then disappearing again into meetings Aiden was no longer a part of. The soldiers were restless, some angry, some scared. Many had stopped sleeping altogether, sitting with rifles in hand, listening for footsteps beyond the walls. Their voices stayed low now, as if the walls themselves might betray them. It was well past nightfall when the knock came. Not from a soldier, not from a runner, but from a child. Aiden looked up from his papers, expecting another report. A boy entered, 12, maybe 13, dirty-faced, rail-thin, a tattered cap perched askew on his head. His eyes darted around the room, wide and unsure. Aiden rose from his chair and met him near the doorway, kneeling slightly to his level. The boy held out a folded scrap of paper with both hands, crumpled at the corners from the grip of someone much older. "It's your mum, sir. Your da's been hit. She said to tell you." The words fell into the room like bricks. Aiden didn't react, not right away. He stared at the boy, the edges of the world blurring. The boy shifted nervously. "A stray bullet," he said. "This morning. He was looking out the window. They were shooting towards the bakery down the street and—" His voice cracked. "She's at the Holy Family's infirmary, sir. She said to please come." Aiden reached for the note, nodding slowly. "Thank you, lad. You did well." The boy nodded, then backed out of the room, cap in hand. Aiden stood there a moment, staring at the folded paper in his palm. He didn't open it, not yet. When he returned to his desk, he sat for a long while, elbows on the wood, head bowed as if in prayer. Then, with deliberate slowness, he unfolded the note. His mother's handwriting, familiar, shaky. "Aiden, your father has been shot. The doctor says he's still alive, but they don't know for how long. I don't know how to get word to you, so I sent Michael's boy. Please, if you can, come soon. Mom." The letter slipped from his fingers and landed softly on the desk. Aiden stared at it, unblinking, as if it might rewrite itself, as if the words might vanish if he looked away. He turned his gaze to the doorway. Beyond it, the barracks. Beyond that, the city. The street where he'd learned to walk. The kitchen window where his father had once waved him off to school. Now there was gunfire in those streets, and blood on those doorsteps. His chair creaked as he shifted forward. One hand gripped the armrest, the other hovered, hesitating, reaching for the edge of the desk as if to push himself up. Go. Stay. The thought beat in his head like a drum. If he left, he'd break the chain of command. He'd risk everything. But if he stayed... He closed his eyes for a moment. Then when he opened them, nothing had changed. The letter still lay there. The fires still burned outside. And the door was still open. This has been World War I Stories, Tales Beyond the Trenches. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show wherever you find this podcast, and don't forget to throw us a comment and a rating. We are on Facebook. Just search and like the official World War I Stories page. You can also join me on Blue Sky, where I go by the handle WW1stories_HennyB. World War I Stories is now featured on Rabbit in Red Radio, with new episodes streaming Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. They also have all episodes available on demand. Visit Rabbit in Red Radio for this and many other independent podcasts. And last but not least, would you like your name read on the show? Become a producer by contributing to our Patreon at patreon.com/World War I Stories. I'm very grateful to everyone who downloads and listens to this show. I'm Henny B, and see you next time on World War I Stories.